Hello there and welcome to this episode of Little Big Knits. My name is Selma. I'm coming to you from a somewhat overcast Ottawa here in July. Actually, it's July 1st, so happy Canada Day to all my fellow Canadians. And yes, I'm coming to you with another episode about knitting. Hello, welcome if you are a new viewer. And welcome back to everybody who's been around for a while. Nice to see you again. What did I share last time? Yes, Knit City Montreal. And so I'm back this time with an episode where there's no vlog this time. It felt like I was getting very vloggy there for a while. The last 3 episodes included a vlog. So today will be a very simple episode compared to those. And I'll be sharing knits, of course. And then I thought I would share a little bit about, I wouldn't say they're my fantasy knits. They're sort of like the knits that I had planned to make this summer that probably won't happen. I always end up with a list that's longer than I expected, or longer than I can realistically make in a summer. And this year especially, my knitting is a little slower than usual, a little bit less prolific just because of the injury that I mentioned last time. So I thought I would share a little bit about the knits that I had been on my radar thinking about making. And we have 2 make-alongs right now. We have the Scrappy Stashy Mal, which is going strong on Ravelry and on Instagram. So much really interesting inspiration. That is a make-along that includes anything that is scrappy. So you're using leftovers or bits and bobs, or stashy, meaning that it's been in your possession since before the end of 2020. So December 31st, 2020. Before that, you had that in your possession, and maybe you just haven't used it, or if you've used part of something, then it automatically becomes a scrappy, in a sense, the leftover. So, and it includes any form of making that has materials in it, such as yarn or threads or fabric. If you are a sewer, there's been some quilts in there that have been finished as well. Weaving is also acceptable. So yeah. And then the other make-along that we have, or actually this one is a knit-along or crochet-along, is the LBK Nordic Cal. And that is about making things using either Nordic yarns or Nordic patterns. So people from the Nordic countries that include Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, the Faroe Islands, and Åland. I believe that's how it went. And that has started out really nicely as well. Somebody had been interested in knowing my plans, so I thought I'll save that for next time. But today I thought I would also share some Nordic patterns that are summer inspiration. So so some of my plans that I had sort of thought I would make that I may not get to, as well as some Nordic inspiration. So that's what I've got for you today, as well as sharing a few fun things and so forth. So let's get started. Let's get started with what I'm wearing. I am wearing my The Perfect Crop Top, so TPCT by Teresa Gregorio, also known as Canary Knits. And this is the second one. I made this earlier in the spring. And I think I showed it to you when I was in Brussels, but I wasn't actually wearing it then. I am wearing it today. I'm a little bit undecided about how much I like this. It's a great t-shirt, great thing to wear underneath things. I'm just wondering about the bottom. Now, I'm wearing it with a blue skirt, not actually the best combination, but I just pulled this skirt on because it's kind of like my sweatpants, but in skirt form for the summer. So I am not convinced. Actually, it looks fine here. All right, maybe I've changed my mind. I wasn't sure about the bottom, and I actually wondered if I wanted to do a split hem here, and I thought that might be a nice addition. But yeah, I keep going back and forth about the bottom of it. I think that I feel like I may modify it at some point, either make it a little shorter or make it a split hem. I haven't quite decided, but it's just a super easy t-shirt, and I've worn it quite a lot. This was made out of ball and skein yarn in a sock base that has glitter in it, in the graphite colorway, and this was yarn that I had gotten at the Vermont Sheep and Wool Festival last October, so a year and 3/4 ago. I bought it specifically to make this top. I'm a size, I have about a 44-inch bust, I think, at this point. But then the previous one I made, I used exactly 2 skeins, and so I bought 2 skeins knowing that I could make this top in 2 skeins, and I still have probably about a 15 gram mini, 10-15 gram mini left that will probably go into a scrappy project. So yeah, just a super simple, the original version is very cropped, and so clearly I made mine a little longer because I think I made mine probably about 10 or 11 inches, and the original one I think is maybe 6 or something like that. So definitely lengthened mine. But I have thought about whether I want to shorten it, and so I'm a little bit undecided still about the bottom, but I've been wearing it. It's been a nice thing to wear. So yeah, that's what I'm wearing today. All right, let's get started with finished objects. This particular finished object, I'm not sure if I had it cast on last time or not. It doesn't seem to be in my notes. I have it in my notes, but scratched out, so maybe I hadn't started it. I got onto the Sophie Scarf bandwagon, and I made the Sophie Scarf. This is the larger version of the two. She also has the Sophie Shawl, but this was the original. This is the Sophie Scarf by Petite Knit. So many people have knit this pattern, and to be quite honest, it's a very simple pattern and very potato chippy, and the kind of thing that you think, oh, I could use that in a few more colors. I'll just put it on. I haven't actually taken pictures for Instagram or my Ravelry yet, but it's really just a cute little thing that you can wear under a jacket, and that's exactly what I wanted. I wanted this under my spring jackets, just to have there. I have a navy blue jacket, and I thought, oh, it needs just a little something. So I now have a little something. And this was a totally enjoyable knit. And I would make it, again, as I said, I don't even know how much yarn I used, but I used 2 strands of Rowan Cashmere Haze, of which I don't know the composition. I'll put it down here. There's cashmere in there, obviously. I think it may be a cashmere alpaca blend. But this was D-Stash from Meka when I met her in Montreal. And it was just, it's such a beautiful color. She knew that I would take it. So she brought it, and I picked it up. I couldn't help myself. And I'm gonna say that this used at most half a ball of each of the strands. So I think that you could get away with making a Sophie Scarf with probably about 125 meters, 150 yards perhaps. I'm sure the pattern says. I had more than enough, so I wasn't worried about it. But it's just going to be a really nice little, just a really nice little piece in the fall under my jacket. So really, really love it. I thought it would be lovely to make some that were a brighter pop of color. This gray was just going to be just a lovely, lovely, easy, neutral. And yeah, so I knit it on the recommended 4.5 millimeter needles. And it's just lovely. And it's so light because of the cashmere haze. It's going to be very easy to wear and to even have in your purse if you're not needing it in that moment, and so forth. So that is work in progress number 1. Not work in progress, finished object. Finished object number 2 is about as cute as could possibly be. as far as garments go, because there are some pretty darn cute knitted toys. I finished the Luca Cardigan by Claudia Quintanilla from Unit Toronto. And I just finally put the buttons on. Is this adorable? Oh, it's so beautiful. I mean, I could literally just put this on the wall and look at it because it's so adorable. So this is from the Making Memories book, which Unit Toronto very kindly sent me a couple of months ago. And they also sent me the yarn to make this cardigan because I had decided that I wanted to make the Luca cardigan for one of the women on my team who was having a baby. So here are two other versions of the Luca cardigan. And I made the 6 to 12 month size. It requires a DK yarn, and they had sent me some Sweet Georgia Superwash DK to make this with. And I would say this used 1 1/3 of the second, a third of the second skein about. So there's enough here possibly to make a hat for the little gentleman. I'll see if I actually am able to get around to that. But hopefully we'll be getting together soon and I'll be able to give this to her. And the baby was born in May, so he's probably not going to fit into this quite yet. But yeah, very, very happy. It's well explained. The stitch pattern was really a very easy and addictive kind of stitch pattern to do, and it was just a lovely little thing to make. I could totally see myself making another one of these. And as far as buttons go, I had these buttons in my button stash. I have a rather extensive button stash that comes from my father, who used to just, anytime he was getting rid of a shirt or he wore his things out until the very end, he would keep whatever he could from it, and he always kept the buttons, and then he would string all the buttons on a string and tie them up, and he just had a container full of them. So I inherited those when he passed away in 2018, or he may have even given, I think he had already given me a lot before that. And then I also went to a flea market at one point, and there was somebody that just had a Ziploc bag full of vintage buttons. So I bought that as well. So before buying buttons, I always go through my collection to make sure. And obviously this needed smaller buttons. And I had 3 or 4 choices that I thought were nice, but I ended up liking these brown ones. There were some green ones, but I actually preferred the brown. So, and I needed 6 and I happened to have 8, so it was perfect. Because sometimes I had buttons that were really nice, but there were only 5 and I needed 6. So yeah. So I think that mommy is going to be very happy with this, and hopefully a baby will wear it and wear it with pride. And yeah, really, really lovely knit. And this yarn is extremely plump and squishy. I don't know if you can see on there how round it is. I believe it's a 3-ply yarn, and just very round, and so it creates a very plump and lush fabric, and the stitch definition is great. So very lovely yarn to work with, I have to say. And thank you very much to Unit Toronto for including me in promoting this, because honestly this was perfect timing and such a lovely book. I'm really happy to make it, and I'm sort of waiting, when's the next time I get to make a baby knit out of here. So really, really nice. Years ago I had another book that had baby knits in it. It was actually a Debbie Bliss pattern book for baby knits, and I remember I made my firstborn a cardigan out of it. And I've mentioned this last time, it ended up with a huge neck, and I think, I mean, that was 20 years ago. I wasn't quite as knowledgeable, and I think I probably wasn't quite as discerning as I would be now reading patterns, because I've made so many garments. So I just followed the pattern, and it just didn't turn out very well. I had told you I was going to use bare buttons for this cardigan that I had left over from that piece actually, but they ended up being too big. And they wouldn't have gone through, and there also were only 5 and I needed 6. So I ended up going with just something far simpler than the bare buttons. They'll have to go on something else at some point. They're being saved for something else. But yeah, now I think this is a great book and a book that I will trust. Like the pattern, this just came out beautifully and I really didn't modify anything. I might have lengthened the body by a ½ an inch or something just because I kept on going. And then I realized I needed to stop. I think I made the sleeves pretty much the length that was mentioned in the book. I really didn't change anything. The instructions for the button bands were really good, so I just followed them. Great book. Lovely patterns. Great. So that's it for finished objects this time. Let's talk about my works in progress. Where to begin? Well, I believe I had started the Ranunculus. Time seems to be in a weird morphous. June was a crazy month for me. It's been a crazy month. I've been working on my arm. As you know, if you were here last time, I had an injury. I fell and I needed surgery. And I now have, do I insert a picture? I'm going to insert a picture of an x-ray of my arm and you can see what I now have in my arm. If you don't want to see it, turn away now. And I'll just have it on there for a few seconds. But I have a pretty intense metal plate in my wrist now. So the month of June, it's gone now. You can look back if you didn't want to see that. The month of June was very much about healing my arm, and it's not fully there, but almost there. It was also 2 birthdays in the house, my firstborn and my birthday. So it's always a busy month that way, and the end of school. And then my mother has been in the hospital for the last 2 weeks. That has been very busy, going to the hospital every day. It's been a little bit intense. So I feel like my sense of time has kind of just gone into this weird place. She is fine. She is stable. She had a urinary tract infection. She has had these so many times and has been hospitalized so many times. 2 years ago, you may recall if you were around, I don't remember how much I spoke about it, but after a UTI, hospitalization because of a UTI, she ended up having to go to rehabilitation because she had sort of lost her mobility. And the same thing has happened this time, but my mother has dementia and it's a little bit more advanced. And as a result, they're not sure they can send her to rehab because she's just not able to follow instructions as well. And she has kind of ended up in this black hole, which is required in the medical system where nobody knows quite what to do with her. So I'm having to play an even larger advocacy role and have had to sort of put my foot down about what is acceptable and not acceptable. Because right now she's gone from being able to use a walker to walk to being completely bedbound. And I'm like, that's not her new baseline. That is the result of lying in a hospital bed for 12 days. So they've moved her to an interim place where they've already reassessed her and said that they think that she can do better. So I'm very happy about that because basically that was going to mean a huge difference in her level of care, which came along with a huge price tag. And I was just like, this is not the reality. This is what has happened because of her being there. We need to support her in some way. So anyway, a long-winded story. It's just been a little bit of a crazy month. So if I'm kind of like, when did I show this to you? I feel like I've been into another dimension a little bit over the last month. As soon as somebody is in the hospital, it just takes things to a different level of attention. I've been there most days visiting after work or on the weekend during the day, or taking a little bit of time off and just trying to get there to spend a bit of time with her. And hospitals are not the most stimulating places. So anyway, back to the knitting. back to the knitting. It's been a crazy time. I'm going to say that my knitting, my next project, matches my mug, which is a beautiful mug. This is by Creative with Clay. Charan Sachar, I think is his name. And he just makes the most beautiful, hand-built pottery. Really, really beautiful. And in there I have a cup of green tea. So, or oolong tea, I should say. And it matches this. Oh, does that ever look beautiful? I wanted this to be finished by now. And it's not. But I'm almost, I think I'm about 3 rows away from separating for the sleeves and the body. And then I'll be very close to finish because this is going to be a short-sleeved version. And I think I'm actually going to make it a little bit more cropped. I haven't quite decided yet. I think I'm going to make it a little bit more cropped than my previous versions. And that is because I have bought a dress, black dress, a sleeveless black dress that has a gathered waist. And I'd like to wear it with that as a layering piece. So I will try this on with the dress and see if that is actually a reality, like that will actually work nicely. So once I finally divide for the body and the sleeves, there won't be a huge amount of knitting left, really. It'll be super potato chippy and probably finish really quickly. And this is the Ranunculus by Midori Hirose, in case you haven't seen this pattern before. I think this is probably one of the most knit patterns in sweaters. It's such a popular pattern, and this is number 7 of this making for me. I've made 2 as gifts out of there. So this is my first summer version of this sweater, and really, really enjoying it. And you know, it's funny because I can see on screen that the stitch definition is actually quite good. When I look at it here, it's a little bit hard to tell, but I think that once it's finished and I have it over something, it'll become more obvious. So this is beautiful yarn that was gifted to me by Smita of a shop called Your Next Knit. And she reached out and asked if I would like something, and she sent me this beautiful, beautiful BC Garn linen. Lino it's called, and I wanted to make a summer ranunculus. So this is color 45. It's this beautiful lavender color. And it's just absolutely stunning. Smita also has offered Little Big Knits viewers a discount code of 15% using the code SELMA15. So please feel free to go and check her website out. She's got a fairly new shop, and is, you know, already I've seen new things in the shop. She's building up her inventory there, and yeah. It was really a lovely, lovely collaboration. So thank you very much for that, Smita. All right. Oh, and one more thing actually about this is that I am making this with 5.5 millimeter needles. The original pattern calls for 6 millimeter needles, but I knew that because of the nature of the yarn, it's essentially a fingering sport weight yarn. Let's say a heavy fingering. I knew that it would be a very airy knit, so I went down a needle size. And this is an interesting pattern because originally, if you have been around the ranunculus for a while, there was originally only one size. And the designer has added, my goodness, I'm not quite sure how many, but many, I think 9 or so sizes. But they pretty much all start the same way. And what I really like about that is that you can kind of decide as you go, is this big enough? The second size is the original size. And I wasn't sure if I was going to do the second size or the third size because they actually start the raglan increases, because this is a pattern that, although it's a yoke, it's got raglan increases at one point, after you've finished all the round yoke design elements. And the second and the third size essentially start with the same stitch count. So you can kind of decide if you want to go a little bit further from there. And I had decided that I would go a little bit beyond the second size, towards the third size, and we'll see how that works. I've always only ever made the second size, so I may end up ripping back. I'll try it on after I've divided for the body and the sleeves and see if that turned out well or if I should go back to the second size. So that is work in progress number 1 in this lovely bicycle bag by Mila Sweet Makes. And the next work in progress that I started after my last episode is the Tulsa Tea by Rebecca Clow, also known as the Crea Bear. Okay, I've got a bit of a yarn mess here, but I decided, I showed you last time that I had, did I show you? You see, there we go again. Anyway, I had gotten from Mel when we did our D-stash at the Knit City Montreal. At Knit City Montreal, we were, Mel and Mega and I were together at an Airbnb, and we did a sort of a D-stash, right? And I had gotten some Katia cotton cashmere from Mel that was sort of leftover. So there was just a couple of balls of 2 different kinds of gray. And then I went out and got a little bit more of the darker gray and a white ball. And I thought, I'm going to make a striped Tulsa tea. And originally I thought I would make regular stripes, but I decided to make them kind of a little bit more haphazard. So here we are at this point with this t-shirt. This peach color is actually Lang Lino, which is a worsted weight linen, but I've decided that I'm going to make it work. This I used in the Tulip Tea last year in a top, and I have a ball and a bit, so I thought, well, that'll be great. It'll make it a stashy or a scrappy sweater. It's a scrappy sweater, except that because this is new to me yarn, I wouldn't call this part of the scrappy stashy mal, but this peach definitely fits in there. So yeah, I'm just doing stripes. I got here and I've kind of changed my mind, and I think I'm going to rip back and do a bit of light and then go back into a darker bit. But yeah, I've been enjoying making this at this point. It's really, really nice. So just a really fun pattern. Rebecca, it is a great pattern in the sense it's a fabulous blank canvas, just a really nicely shaped raglan sweater that she made as a tee. So it's meant to have short sleeves, but there's the basic raglan, and then she has a document with the modifications that you can bring to it in terms of stitch patterns. And she's also added a fingering weight version, because this is actually a DK, quite a loose gauge. My gauge is a little bit off because this yarn is kind of more of a light, it's a DK, but I would say a little lighter, and I didn't want it to be quite open, so I'm actually making mine on 4mm needles, and my gauge is quite off, so I'm making a much larger size than I would normally make, and it's worked out well. But she's also created a fingering version. So when you buy this pattern, you get the DK version, you get the modifications, and you get the fingering weight version. So, you know, it's really a sweater that can become multiple sweaters, and just a really nice blank canvas. So I'm making mine into this type of multi-stripes, and we'll see how it works out. It'll just be a fun, you know, a fun t-shirt to wear with a pair of shorts or a little jean skirt or something like that. And I'm keeping this one in this funny bag that I got years ago. Well, it was my mother's, and it says Sauna Bag on it, which means it's a bag. Gasti is bag, and sauna is a sauna, and it's sort of a bag to go to the sauna. You would put your, you know, toiletries or whatever in there, and it's just a nice canvas bag, so I end up using it as a project bag from time to time. And then another thing I've been working on is a little bit different. And it's in this wonderful bag from Matterroot, Maine, that my friend Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft gave me last year, I believe, and it's just been a great bag for this particular project. This is not knitting. Actually, I think that this would qualify for the stashy mal, the scrappy stashy mal, because I basically took a sweater that was a wool sweater I had made that had gotten a stain on it that fit a little bit oddly, and I just never wore it anymore, especially because of the stain. The odd fit didn't stop me from wearing it, but the stain did, and I couldn't get the stain out. And so I decided to felt the sweater and make a tea cozy out of it. And I felted this probably 2 years ago, and I cut it sometime last year. And a friend of mine and I were getting together every week to watch the 3rd season of Ted Lasso. When Ted Lasso finished, which I just absolutely adored, and we've now started rewatching it now that we're getting together for another reason, we were like, we really liked getting together every week. What are we going to do? And I said, why don't we have a craft evening? Because she does a lot of mending. She's not a knitter, but she does a lot of visible mending stuff, and she does sewing. And so now I've been going over every week, and I thought I'm going to bring something that is not knitting, because I knit all the time, and I have sewing projects that I want to do, and when I'm at home, I just knit. So I decided to finally start working on this tea cozy, and what I wanted to do was some sachiko style of embroidery on it. I've never done this before, so my efforts are, I would say, valiant and lovely, but certainly not clean and polished. Let's just put it that way. But I have started doing in this peach color. Well, actually, I finished this section, and I had an idea for something else that I wanted to do here, but I've kind of stalled because I'm not sure that actually is what I want to do anymore. I do feel like I want something over here, but I haven't completely decided. I was just going to do these little lines and possibly turn them into sort of like not perfect crosses, but crosses that were off, or X's. But I'm not 100% sure I'm going to do those anymore. So last week when I was working on this, I thought, well, if I don't know what I'm going to do there, why don't I just embroider the word tea? So that's how far I've gotten with this. I've got the word tea, and I've got these waves. I'm not using sachiko thread. I'm using the regular, what do you call this stuff? The DMC, is it the DMC? Yeah, the DMC types of threads. And the reason I'm doing it in those types of peachy, orangey colors is that I'm going to line this, and I've got this fabric that has orange and peach and white on it. I've already cut it out, and once I'm ready to put this in, I'm going to then fold it up so that there'll be a trim at the bottom with the fabric. So yeah, what do I do? Do I just leave this, or does it need something there? I haven't quite decided. And I might do a little bit of stitching around tea here just to make it a little bit more something. And then my plan is to put this together with the blanket stitch, and then I'll sew the 2 pieces of this with the machine, but then fold it over and hand stitch the bottom. And then I will have a tea cozy, finally. I've been wanting to make one for a very long time, in any fabric or yarn or whatever, and I just never got around to it. So yeah, very excited. So if you have an opinion, let me know. I'm curious. But that has been really nice to finally do this, and these crafting evenings have worked out really great. This week we couldn't do it, and we couldn't do it last week either. With summer plans now, it makes it a bit more complicated, but we are going up to her cottage next weekend. So I'm hoping to get further along with this and finish the embroidery part and maybe even put it together. So let's see. You may see this as a finished object or a continued whip, but I'm really glad to finally get this, and also to get over my mental hurdle around stitching. And you know, it's not perfect by any means, but I'm quite okay with that. I quite like the whimsy of that, and it's really great. I have since bought some Sachiko thread because I thought, oh, it would be nice to do something else. And I've also started, both of my kids have come to me with ripped jeans. So I have fixed one pair. They look so terrible. I gotta be honest, they're hilarious looking, but it's in the crotch area and it's pretty invisible, and they were fine with it. So I thought, okay, as a first go, I've another hurdle that I've gotten over, because I have a pair of jeans that need mending as well. And you know, I have 2 or 3 other pairs of jeans that are waiting to get mended. So I'm looking forward to doing a little bit of that as well. So that is, what is that? Whip number 3. And as I said, June was my birthday month, the 28th, in fact, just a couple of days ago. And I did not buy myself yarns. I'm going to show you some things that have come into my life after this. And I didn't want to buy myself yarn because I've sort of put myself on a little bit of a yarn, do I want to call it a diet? I'm just not going to buy yarn until the fall. There are a couple of things happening in the fall. I'm expecting to do some traveling, and one of those trips is to Barcelona Knits. So I'm sort of saving myself for then. I have so many beautiful yarns to work with. And in fact, here's my cast on. I had gotten this beautiful yarn at Crochet Compagnie in Verdun in Montreal, which has now they've decided to close their doors, and they're only going to have an online shop. But I had sort of a gift certificate for their store. So, or it wasn't a gift certificate, it was, well, anyway, whatever. I had a voucher for their store, that's what I had. And I got 2 skeins of Illimani Sabri, which is an 85% cotton, 15% alpaca yarn. Beautiful, beautiful yarn. And I had wanted to make the salty air tea. And so this is what I cast on. I didn't actually cast it on my birthday because I swatched on my birthday, but I cast it on the next day, and I haven't gotten very far. It's just been a little bit busy in the last couple of days with birthday celebrations and visiting my mom and stuff. So I've almost gotten to the end of the ribbing, not very far, but I thought this would also be something really nice over the dress that I bought, with the gathered waist. We'll see how long I end up making it, but it'll also depend. I have 2 skeins, so it might end up being a little bit cropped only because I don't have more yarn. But again, it's amazing what you can do with 2 skeins of yarn. Like, I've gotten perfectly decent length garments out of 2 skeins of yarn. So there we go. So that is really the last whip. Not a whole lot to say there at this point, but I'm excited about making the Salty Air Tea by Samantha Guerin, or Guerin, I should say. I thought, oh, is she French-Canadian? She does have a French name, but she is in the States. So I don't know if she's originally Canadian, but whatever. There are lots of French names in all over the place. I just always assume. And this is in a bag that I made with remnants from Marimekko. I made this a few years ago when I was sewing more, and I just love this bag. It's so fun. So those are all my whips. plenty of them. So I thought I would just spend a few minutes talking about some of the summer patterns that I sort of had on my list at the beginning of the season of things that I wanted to make and haven't cast on yet. I don't know if I will. I think that if I finish those 3 sweaters, the Ranunculus, the Tolsta, and the Salty Air, that will probably be close to the end of the summer. We'll see. But I did want to share a little bit about some other knits that I had in my mind. I think we're now going to start hearing some family noises. So one thing that I really, and actually the Salty Air was on there, so I finally cast that on. But when I was at Montreal, at Knit City, Montreal, I saw a couple of versions of the Velicore by Andrea Mowry. And this is actually a pattern that I have in my library and have every single time I've been somewhere and somebody has been wearing a Velicore, I think I need to cast that on because I actually like the in-person versions more than her versions. The ones that I've seen, I'm always totally inspired by them. And I don't know if that will happen, but that was one that I just kept thinking, oh, it's just so beautiful. And I actually saw a version the other day somewhere. Where did I see that? Was it on Ravelry, of somebody who had made one in linen? And that's what I had been thinking of doing, is making mine in linen as well. So that may end up happening. We'll see. But certainly one that is on my radar. Another one that is on my radar, something else that I was thinking about making this summer with some Knitting for Olive pure silk that I have in a lovely blue colorway, was the Anna. I don't know what you call the Anna Tea, I'm not sure, but this is by Sarah Stark. But I just haven't gotten around to casting it on. I keep thinking that I need to get the Knitting for Olive silk out and just start swatching with it. But yeah, so that was another one that was on my mind to make this summer. Another one that I was thinking about is the Flex by Unkestrick. I have made this sweater before in a light blue version, and I really, really love that sweater a lot. I wear it a lot. In fact, I was a little bit concerned because it had gotten kind of stained around the neck, and I soaked it in a certain kind of wash, and it just cleaned it up. And it's a product called Forever New. I think it's a Canadian product, but it's supposed to be for delicates, lingerie and stuff like that, but I find it's an amazing stain remover. So I've been buying that for years, and I use it primarily for stains. And it just totally cleaned up my Flex. So I've been thinking I really want a second one of these, but I don't know if that's going to get cast on this year. Maybe it'll get prioritized for next year, but I feel like it's been on my radar for like 3 or 4 years that I keep wanting to make a new one. So we'll see when that happens. The thing about summer is that it's just not that long. So I don't usually end up making more than 3, maybe 4 at the most summer items, and then I'm back into the fall and wanting to get ready for winter. So I have quite a few summer yarns. I love making summer sweaters. I wear a lot of them, but I just can't keep up with the fact that it's just not that long a season. I mean, I suppose I could knit summer sweaters in the winter. I just don't. So we'll see. The other one that I wanted to make that has been in my library for a long time, she's not a well-known designer. Is this a free pattern? It may even be a free pattern, but it's called the Voyage Cardigan, and she's a Lithuanian designer. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to be able to pronounce her name, but it looks like it's Aiste or Este Butkeviciene. And it's sort of a very simple dolman-shaped cardigan, and I've been wanting to make it since I saw it. I don't know, whenever the pattern came out. I I even have some yarn for it. I have a lovely white, I wanted to make a white cardigan, a lovely Galsk summer yarn that I think is a cotton linen blend, if I remember correctly. So that's another one that I thought I would make, and it didn't happen. And then the other thing that I really wanted to make this summer, and you know, certainly my knitting has slowed down because of my arm, and I'm a little bit mindful about what I can work on and how much I can work on. So I really wanted to make myself a bathing suit cover. So kind of a tunic. I see sort of a mesh kind of fabric, and mesh is really big right now. It's amazing how many mesh patterns are out there, and I see mesh sweaters in the shops. And so I kept thinking that I wanted to make this bathing suit cover out of sort of a mesh fabric, and I have 4 skeins, so 2 skeins in each of these. This is a 50% linen, 30% cotton, and 20% bamboo lace weight from Small Bird Workshops. Or Small Bird Workshop, no S on it. And she is located in BC. The yarn is milled in Italy, and it is a lace weight. And I had actually swatched with it already when I got this yarn, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. And I had put the 2 colors together, and it made this, which I really, really like. And I had thought to create some sort of bathing suit cover, although it's so nice it could just end up being a t-shirt. I think this is a 4.5 millimeter. I think I had swatched with 4 millimeter, and then I thought I would try 4.5. Not 100% sure, but these are the 2 colors together, and I really like them together. So this was another plan that I had. I thought, okay, I need to make that bathing suit cover, but that has gotten stalled as well. And I honestly, there's a top called the Siesta top. I'll put a picture here, and I don't even remember I can't remember the designer's name, so I'll put it down here. But I thought about using that stitch pattern and just building the bathing suit cover from that stitch pattern, and just kind of fashioning something that I could wear over the bathing suit. But I don't think that's going to happen this year either. So yeah, and then of course there's Nordic inspiration, and I wanted to make the tankar by Annina. I mentioned that to you last time, so hopefully I'll get a chance to cast that on this year. But I wanted to show you the sweater that I had made that I'm expecting to pull apart, which was this one. It's been crinkled up in a bag, but I think this tankar in a green, and I just love this color. But this is the Paloma, I think by, is it Sarah Hatton or Kim Hargreaves? And I have a version that I've worn many, many times, but this one just, the neck ended up wrong. It didn't have the ease I wanted. And when I made this, I was thinner, but it still didn't have the ease then. So it never got worn. So I will be ripping this out. I think I'll be ripping this out soon, and just to have the yarn ready. And hopefully, if I can, I will start the tankar tea. So the tankar is a pattern that just came out and would be eligible for the Nordic, LBK Nordic Cal. It's by Annina Juti, who has the Anni Juti Knits podcast as well. And she's from Finland. We met when I was in Finland, and we've been in touch many, many times. We're part of a chat group together, and yeah, so the tankar by Annina is a great Nordic summer inspiration. Sari Nordland, who is a prolific designer and has also lots of lovely summer patterns, came out with a beautiful camisole this year called the Sunset Camisole. And it is made, I think she made it out of the pure silk, if I remember correctly. It's a fingering weight. The tankar, by the way, was a DK weight, I believe, a DK worsted weight. And yeah, so another beautiful Finnish designer. Sari Nordlund just has fabulous designs, and she's very much known for her beautiful stitch patterns and cable patterns and so forth. But this ruffle detail on this camisole is just so, so pretty. Another bit of Nordic inspiration is by Elizabeth Judith. She's a Danish designer. I really enjoy her aesthetic, and I've never made one of her patterns, but I just really, she has lovely, lovely patterns. I've favorited so many of them, but this one is for the Sammansat 8, and it's just this lovely, lovely, lovely pattern. And she just has so many of them, honestly, but she's definitely somebody to check out. The other one is also a Danish designer, and it's Pernille Larsen. Pernille Larsen is the, I believe, the co-founder of Knitting for Olive. I believe she started Knitting for Olive with her daughter, if I've got the roles right. And she made a sweater, or designed a sweater called the Fern Sweater, which is a beautiful, I think it's got a turtleneck. It's just got a really pretty pattern on it, very wintry. It's knit with, you know, mohair and wool. But she recently came out with the Fern Tea, and it is such a pretty tea. It uses fingering weight Knitting for Olive cotton merino, I believe. And I've had my eye on that, just thinking that's really, really pretty. She has lovely designs, somebody else to look out for. Then there is Meiju KP, or Kope, from Finland as well. And she came out with a lovely pattern this spring called Kevyt, which means light. And it's this really interesting sort of dolman sweater with the lace detail towards the bottom and solid towards the top. It's really neat. I was drawn to it right away, not to mention it's one of my favorite colors, this kind of blue-gray, but very, very interesting top. So something else that, that I was intrigued by. Lene Tøsti, I hope I'm pronouncing that well, a Norwegian designer. She has some amazingly feminine yokes, just beautiful, beautiful yokes. And the crocus is one that I've admired for a long time. Just so pretty. And a lovely, lovely design. But she has several actually that are very similar with different stitch patterns. And she has lovely, lovely patterns as well. And lastly, this is actually, I started swatching for this the other day, but then I decided to go with the Salty Air Tea. I have made the Anker sweater, but there's also the Anker Tea. This is by Petite Knit. She's the one who designed the Sophie Scarf that I made. She's a prolific designer and makes patterns that are just so classic and lovely, and people love her patterns. And the Anker Tea is one that I really like. It's a fingering weight version. The original version is more of a worsted weight, if I remember correctly. And I wear that one all the time. I made it in a blue, 2 yarns together, and every time I wear it, I get compliments. I think the blue is one aspect of it, but it just sits really nicely. And so I thought I would really like to make the Anker Tea and make it in a white Knitting for Olive cotton merino that I have. We'll see. But yeah, that's just a few mentions of Nordic designers that have summer patterns that I thought I'd share with you. So I thought I'd just quickly share some lovely gifts, essentially, that have come my way over the last little while. One of them was for my birthday. The other 2 were just sort of generous gifts from yarn dyers. So my friend Kate of the Hawthorne Cottage Craft had this package sent to me with this beautiful blue. Look at that, isn't that stunning? This is the Espace Tricot Petit Lin Plus, which is their sport weight linen. So this is a 100% linen yarn, and that is a sport weight. It has 250 yards. Linen tends to be quite heavy, so one would think that that was more of a DK, but it's actually more of a sport weight. And Kate had also shared the oh my goodness, what's it called? Was it called the Basic Crop Top by Jobii Locatelli? I put a picture here, which is really, really lovely. I don't tend to make sleeveless things. It's funny, I feel like I should get over that, but I was just watching Inga of Knitting Traditions, and she was talking about not liking baring her arms, and I'm kind of the same. I like to have just a little bit of something there. So I was hesitant about this Jobii pattern, yet I really love it. And when she first came out with it, I thought, that is beautiful. And every time I see a version, I think, that is beautiful. And Kate had sent me that pattern in addition to this, thinking that I could make that. So we may make that. Although I was also thinking about some sort of little cropped mesh top with this. Another thing that came to my mind this year, there's that fabulous sweater by James N. Watts called Look at My Holes, which many people have made, and I just always think that's actually really an interesting piece. But I did think about, you know, making the siesta top that I showed you earlier, or something like that, or maybe even the Kevut by Mayu in this linen. But we'll see. I'm not sure if I'm going to get to this year, but it's just an absolutely beautiful blue, kind of in the turquoise range of things. What is this called? La Chine Canal. So the La Chine Canal is a canal in Montreal, and it's named after that. Really beautiful. So thank you so much for that, Kate. Before going to Knit City, Montreal, I had gotten some yarn from Alley Cat Yarns. I got a skein of her Ontario sock, one for Mega, and one for Mel, and one for myself. However, Melissa was very kind and she gave me yarn. So I think that some of this yarn will be kept for prizes for the podcast. So the one that I got for Mel, Mega, and myself is this Ontario sock, which is a 80% Dorset Cheviot and 20% mohair. It's very tightly spun and just feels so substantial. I'm very excited about this and really looking forward to making some socks in this. Melissa ended up giving me two more in this red and this beautiful blue. So I think I'll definitely be keeping at least one of these for the podcast as a prize for the make-alongs that we're having, or something else. But she also gifted me two others, which are just so beautiful, in her smooth sock, which is a 85 superwash merino and 15% nylon. Just these beautiful, beautiful colors. So thank you so much for that, Melissa. Just such a generous local dyer, and yeah, really, really lovely. And then Cami Jo, or Camilla, I should say, from Cami Jo Knit and Cami Jo Yarns, sent me a care package with some goodies and some yarn, which was just really, really, really lovely. Total surprise. I was not expecting this. So she sent this pale lilac merino sock, which is so pretty. Oh my goodness, this would make a really pretty feminine pair of socks. And she also sent me this one here, which is the dark dusty rose in her merino cashmere silk base, which is just luscious. And I could see this becoming something around my neck. Very, very, very beautiful. I didn't get a chance to talk about this on the last podcast, but she had sent this as a wonderful care package, and I just really appreciate it. It really warmed my heart. So thank you so much for that, Camilla. Really, really lovely. Along with some minis that will go into my crochet blanket, which I have not been working on. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that. But beautiful. I love this yellow and pink especially. I'm just like, woohoo. So thank you, Camilla. Really, really appreciate it. So just so many good things that came into my life. So thank you very, very much for all of those. And a few things I wanted to mention. So I started listening to a book called Lincoln in the Bardo. Who in the world was the writer of that? I'm suddenly blanking out. But I really couldn't continue listening to it. It wasn't that the narration was problematic. I think it's actually a book that would be better to read than to listen to. There are all these little newspaper clippings that are read out, and I was like, it makes up the story. It sort of tells, it creates the environment of this society, of this community, of the Lincoln family. And I just couldn't get into it when I was listening to it. And I thought, okay, I'm not gonna continue because it's just not enjoyable to listen to. So instead I started the next Louise Penny book called The Brutal Telling, which I think was the 5th book in the series. There are 18 books, and I loved The Brutal Telling. Really, really loved this book. The intrigue and the characters are great, but there was a lot about art and poetry in it. It was just really beautiful, very philosophical. I really enjoyed this one a lot. And as always, there's a lot of comical moments. There are a couple of characters in the book who bring a lot of comic relief. And I really enjoyed it a lot. And have since then started listening to the Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver, which interestingly, this is a book that came out, 20-something years ago. And I remember picking it up then, and I, for some reason, couldn't get into it. And now I'm listening to it, and I'm really, really enjoying it a lot. And it's great. As I said, we finished the 3rd season of Ted Lasso. I really, really enjoyed that series. It's so positive, such a fun series that deals with a lot of issues in a very light way, but deals with them, and also just really debunks this need for a mean culture in sports, for example, and in the locker rooms. And it's just really fun and funny, and really enjoyed Ted Lasso, and ended up watching Shrinking, which is about psychotherapists, or are they psychotherapists or psychologists? And Harrison Ford is in it, and I can't remember the name of the main character, the actor of the main character, Rogan. It's Rogan, I believe. Anyway, it's by the same writers as Ted Lasso, and it's definitely got some of that feel as well. There's just one season, and it was really quite good. I can't say that I liked it quite as much. Okay, so we got cut off there. My phone was full. So I think I was saying that I didn't like Shrinking quite as much as Ted Lasso, but still totally goofy and enjoyable, and and slightly raunchy, but in a fun way still, and really enjoyed it. So that was something that I wanted to share with you. Also went to see the movie based on the Judy Blume book, Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. Went to see that with a friend, and that was really fun. That was a really fun movie to watch. especially if you were around in the 70s when that book came out, and if you read it and remembered bits of it. It was a fun rendition of the movie. Totally feel good and fun. And I've been watching, of course, actually somebody else put me onto these videos about exercises for hands and different repetitive syndromes of different kinds, and I'll link that. It's a YouTube channel, and she does a lot of videos explaining exercises that you can do if you have pain in your thumb, for example, or if you have a repetitive strain, or if you have an injury. So I've been watching those and doing some of the exercises that she talked about, because I did, obviously wanted to get my wrist, and I still want to get my wrist to optimal function, as well as deal with the repetitive strain that I've got. It's improved slightly, because I've been doing some things here and there, and hopefully it'll continue to improve. And I am knitting a little bit less than I normally would have because of it, and being mindful of knitting in really short spurts. And it's funny, sometimes I feel like I need to put heat on my arms, and sometimes I feel like I need to put ice, so I just try and respect what it needs. So yeah, so I'll link that channel down below, just in case you are dealing with an injury, or you're dealing with repetitive strain syndrome from knitting, or you do sometimes. It's an interesting channel that way. So those are the things that I wanted to share with you. I realized there are a couple of things that I've left off, but I can share them with you next time. I don't know that I'll be able to get this video edited before we come back from our little short trip to Kingston. So there may be some footage at the end of this video from Kingston. If not, there will be just some pictures of the patterns that we've talked about today. We're going to Kingston next weekend. I'm going to my friend's cottage. You've seen footage from there lots of times, so you might see that. You'll probably see that next time. And there's also some camping in my future. Summer ends up being a really busy time, so let's see what you see next time. But because it's been such a busy month, and honestly, because of the forest fires that you've probably heard about, we've definitely spent a lot less time outside. The time we've spent outside has been mostly at our allotment garden, where we grow lots of things. We've got garlic, and we're struggling with a little vole who is getting in there and eating our Swiss chard and escarole. So I don't know how much Swiss chard we're going to get this year, but we've got gooseberries and black currants, and we've got rhubarb and beets and tomatoes and things like that. So that's where we've spent most of our outside time. There just seems to be this haze constantly. It's not quite as bad as it was. And it was very dry, but we had some very serious rain earlier in the week. So I think that that's had a positive impact. I don't think that there are so many forest fires, and I think this is going to be an unfortunate reality for this summer. We are getting more rain this weekend, unfortunately, just when we're going to Kingston, but happy to have the rain if it continues to hydrate the forests and hopefully put out some of the fires or prevent new ones or spreading. So yeah, but so there isn't any outdoor footage for you this time, but hopefully next time there will. And until then, please take care, and we'll see you then.